Hello, smart drivers. Pass your driver's test first time. That's what we're talking about tonight. We're going to give you tips, strategies, and skills to be successful on your driver's test first time. Passing your driver's test, and the first and foremost thing that you need to know is what's on the driver's test. Are you doing the Ohio maneuverability test? For those of you in the state of Ohio, are you backing along a curb? For those of you in the state of California, parallel parking. Are you parallel parking on the roadway behind a single car between two vehicles, or are you parallel parking off a concrete median, concrete barrier in the DMV center? Are you parallel parking with cones? So figure that information out, and that is going to make your test much, much easier because then you can practice to the test. All right. Practice in and around the test center in the off hours and on weekends and at the time when your test is going to be. If your test is on a weekday at 10 o'clock in the morning, that's when you should be practicing at that location so you can replicate the traffic that you are going to encounter for your driver's test. For those of you new to Smart Drive Test, my name is Rick August. I was a truck driver in the 1990s. Most of that decade drove truck between Ontario, Canada, and the United States. Became a licensed commercial driving instructor in 1997. 2006, graduated from the University of Melbourne in Australia with my doctorate in legal history, which many of you may or may not know is the study of policing, courts, and prisons. My expertise is in policing as it relates to traffic. And while I was going to university, drove buses for Greyhound and one of the regional bus lines there in Australia. 2015 started the online YouTube channel, the Smart Drive Test Business, selling courses, and it has been wildly more successful than I could have ever imagined. And if you want to know more about me, you can check out my autobiography over at the Smart Drive Test website. New videos this week, and I want to thank everybody for helping to keep me honest. I'm going to put up a new video every Monday at 1:30 in the afternoon. That's my new goal. New video Monday at minimum. New video on Monday. So this Monday it was drive safe on curvy roads, on mountain roads that are switchbacks. And for those of you who don't know what a switchback is, the mountain is too steep to drive straight up. So they zigzag the road along the face of the mountain so that you can go up it. And this is what we were doing, is driving in East Kelowna here in the interior British Columbia along a switchback, and we show you how to do that, deal with speed bumps, and we were following a learner driver as well, and they needed a bit more mentoring in terms of going over speed bumps and whatnot. So have a look at that video, and as well, what do the colors of traffic signs mean? The new short last week. So have a look at those resources as well, and you can find the links to those down there in the description. All right, the first thing you need to do in your quest for getting your driver's license is you need to do a knowledge test. And your knowledge test is to get your learners so that you can drive a car with a mentor, with a driving instructor, and practice driving. The knowledge test is going to consist of topics such as signs, signals, and road markings, terminology, what is a complex intersection, what is a painted island, right-of-way, who has the right-of-way at different intersections, and those types of things. And it is going to talk about the driving task, and it's going to talk about night driving, attitudes, signs, and whatnot. So have a look at all of that information. Have a peruse through the driver's handbook for your state or your province, and know as well, just scan the book, look through the chapters, look through the topics, look at the subheadings, look at the images, the captions under the images, all of that information in the book. And then, as I said before in the introduction, go to the driving test questions online, practice those, identify the gaps in your knowledge, and then go back to the book and study the sections. Use the index, use the table of contents to look for the sections that you didn't do well on the test. Read that information and then go back and do the test questions again, because doing the test questions for the learner's permit is a skill in and of itself. Read the question carefully, identify the keywords in the question, and then read each answer, okay? Pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer, for the purposes of passing your driver's test. Every driver's test has 4 components. The way that everybody else drives on the highway, on the roadways, in the cities is called social driving. They don't come to a complete stop at stop sign intersections. They speed, they follow too close, they are retaliatory, they don't signal, and on and on and on goes the list of what drivers do after they get their license. You cannot drive the way that those people drive and pass your driver's test. The 4 components of your driver's test are speed management, space management, observation, and communication. You must have those 4 components in place to be successful on your driver's test. And to get more detail about those, look at the playlist, must-see videos before your driver's test. And Corey will put those up for you to have a look at, and you can get the details for these 4 components that you need to be successful on your driver's test. 1/7 of your driver's test is slow speed maneuvers. Parallel parking, 3-point turn, backing into a parking space, which is also called reverse parking or perpendicular parking, 2-point reverse turn, which is backing around a corner, or a U-turn. Many driving examiners will get you to do a U-turn at the end of a cul-de-sac. And cul-de-sac is another piece of terminology that you need to know for your driver's test. A cul-de-sac is basically a dead-end road that comes up, and it has a traffic circle at the end for you to turn around, and there are houses usually located on that cul-de-sac. They will get you to do a U-turn in that cul-de-sac, okay? They generally will not get you to do a U-turn in a busy intersection as a new driver. The other piece about slow speed maneuvers, even though they are such a small portion of your driver's test, they comprise every aspect of your driving because they will teach you mastery of the primary controls. The steering wheel, the accelerator, and the brake. Those are your primary controls. Take your time, do the slow speed maneuvers. Yes, I know doing slow speed maneuvers is a lot like riding a moped. It's not very sexy, but spend the time. The return on investment is absolutely huge. I cannot emphasize that enough. It's 20% in, 80% out. This will improve your overall driving. Requirements for your driver's test: holding your vehicle in the lane, observing, and shoulder checking. And shoulder checking is probably the most common error that new drivers make on a test. You must shoulder check every time that you change directions of the vehicle. You must signal every time you change directions of the vehicle. Know that for the purposes of a driver's test, because shoulder checking is the first skill that drivers learn after getting their driver's license, all right? So when in doubt, stop. If the traffic situation is too complex for you to handle or you don't know the correct response, simply stop, wait for the traffic to clear, and then proceed. And I know this is weird for new drivers because you just don't want to get it wrong. And in some situations, it might be better to just stop. For example, if you're going down a suburban road and there's a cyclist and there's another car coming in the other direction, and you think, oh, I can squeeze between the cyclist and the oncoming vehicle. No, your better response would have been to stop and wait for the oncoming car to pass and then go around the cyclist, because you need minimum 3 feet, 1 meter between your vehicle and pedestrians. And if you don't do that and you crowd a pedestrian or you crowd a cyclist, that will be an automatic fail on a driver's test. Maybe at minimum it might be a major error, but it's most likely going to be an automatic fail. You must also stop for emergency vehicles and other unexpected events on the driver's test. Okay, abilities for the driver's test: 2 hands on the steering wheel for the duration of the test, stopping in a line of traffic, 1 vehicle length back, which your landmark for that is being able to see the tires of the vehicle in front of you making clear contact with the pavement. Stopping at the correct position for controlled intersections, before the stop line, for the crosswalk lines or sidewalk. If those 2 conditions don't exist, then at the edge of the intersection where the 2 roads meet. That's where you need to stop at controlled intersections. Yellow traffic lights, turning right on a red light. These are chance events that might happen on your driver's test, and this is why you need to get as much practice as you can during your learner's phase. You may go out for 10 practice driving sessions leading up to your driver's test. And in those 10 practice driving, say 10 hours of driving, you may only hit a yellow traffic light 1 time. You may only turn right on a red light 1 time in those 10 hours. These are chance events that you potentially could encounter on your driver's test, and you need to be prepared for these. And Cora put up the video for you on 10 chance events that you could potentially encounter on your driver's test. You also need to know right of way, and right of way can be boiled down into 3 or 4 general rules. Major road over minor road, straight through traffic over turning traffic, and right turning traffic over left turning traffic. Those are the general right-of-way rules. Roundabouts, vehicles in the roundabout. You have to give way to vehicles in the roundabouts. And roundabouts can be a little bit weird. And if you have roundabouts in and around the test center where you're going, make sure that you get some experience with the roundabouts before taking your driver's test. In the weeks, 10 days before your driver's test, revisit the slow speed maneuvers. Again, this will refresh some stuff and you'll find it easier to do because you've got some driving experience and you know how the vehicle handles now, its turning radius, those types of things, how much the steering wheel turns and whatnot. So revisit these. Do your parallel parking, your backing into parking spaces, 3-point turns, and your 2-point reverse turns. At minimum, every driver's test except California, Ohio, and Maryland are going to have parallel parking, 3-point turn, and backing into a parking space, reverse stall parking. Practice those, know those for your driver's test. The other piece about this is the driving examiners have discretion about what they get you to do for the purposes of the driver's test. If they feel that you're doing really well and they're in a mood or decide on a whim that they want you to do a 2-point reverse turn rather, you have to do a 2-point reverse turn for the purposes of your driver's test. If they want you to park along a curb, you got to park along a curb, okay? It's up to the discretion of the examiner. Lots of smart drivers come back to me and say, oh, I didn't have to parallel park on my driver's test. Yes, that's up to the discretion of the driving examiner. You can take driving lessons in preparation for practicing for your on-road test. You can take a package of lessons, 10 classes, for example. You can take individual lessons, a lesson here and there. And then you can take a mock road test, which is a practice driving test. And the instructor will take you on the driving test route around where you're going to be taking your test. And they will show you the location where the driving examiner will get you to do the slow speed maneuvers, the 3-point turns, parallel parking, and those types of things. Because the test is, they have a certain number of routes, and we, the driving instructors, we know where all those routes are and how to help you out. So, and as well, driving instructors will give you feedback on what you need to improve to be successful on your road test first time. During your learner's phase, get as much practice as you can, okay? Drive as many different vehicles as you can. Operate in many different driving conditions. Drive at night, drive in the rain, drive in the snow, drive in the mountains, drive in the fog. If your mom's going to the grocery store, get in and go drive to the grocery store, okay? All of those little short trips are going to add up and make you a better driver overall. Practice in as many different vehicles as you can. If your Uncle Bill is going to the bottle shop to pick up a bottle of booze, offer to drive with him, and get as much driving in different vehicles. That way you're going to have more experience and you're going to be better prepared for your driving test. As well, when you get in the vehicle with different people, it prepares you for getting in the vehicle with the driving examiner, and you're not going to be so freaked out when that happens. The good, the bad, and the ugly of driver's tests. The bad news is that sometimes people who weren't ready for the driver's test pass anyway because everything in the driving environment goes swimmingly. Sometimes good drivers don't pass because everything in the driving environment goes wrong. Okay, that's just a reality of driving. Driving is dynamic, the traffic situation changes, and it's not always going to be an easy go of passing a driver's test. I had a student some years ago, he comes in the morning, this was for a truck license. He was like, oh, I got this, I'm all ready for my test tomorrow. And we come down the hospital hill here in Vernon, and the ambulance comes out onto the highway, and then it turned off. That's a bummer. We come down through the hill, through the intersection, and another ambulance comes out. But this time, it went past, and he didn't pull over. And I said to him, you just failed your driver's test. He goes, what do you mean I failed my driver's test? I said, well, you didn't stop for the emergency vehicle. It was a good learning opportunity for him to know that maybe he wasn't ready for everything that he could encounter on his driver's test. But that's when you want to fall down, is when you're taking lessons, and that's when you want to learn and get the right instructions so you can be successful in passing your driver's test first time. So if you're going to take a practice driving test with an instructor, book 3 weeks out. They're very busy. We're coming into the busy time of the year with summertime. Book it 7 to 10 days before your actual driving test, because you don't want to fail your driver's test, because then you got to rebuild your confidence. And it's really tough to kind of get past that. But at one and the same time, Don't let somebody else's opinion of you become your reality. If they said that you failed, you failed. Book another driver's test as soon as you can. Get back out there, practice the areas that they gave you feedback on, and then go and do your driver's test and get your driver's license. Okay, luck favors the prepared, as my friend Edna likes to say. Learn the basics, master the basics, and prepare for the opportunity to be successful on your driver's test. The night before your driver's test, get a good night's sleep, bring documentation, your driver's license. If you wear prescription glasses, bring those. And yes, bring money. There is a cost for taking your driver's test. And as well, there's also a cost for administering your license. Unless signs prohibit it and there is a parking area for your DMV, back into the parking stall. I know that in New York City and Los Angeles and other places, they're not going to have offices, so you're just going to have to park along the roadway and then wait. And during your driver's test, keep going until the examiner tells you to stop. If you made a mistake, don't perseverate on it. Don't worry about it. Don't even mention it to the examiner, because the examiner may or may not have seen it. Keep going until they tell you to stop. Take away their right to fail you on your driver's test. Okay, nothing less, nothing more. Be successful. And as well, focus on what you're doing. Do not believe the myths. This is a picture of Charlie here. I got his head kind of cut off here with the picture-in-picture. But when we were going to Salmon Arm, Charlie said to me, if you get the guy with the monocle, you're going to fail your driver's test. This was the myth about driving examiners in Salmon Arm, and that is simply not true. Okay, I don't even think I've seen somebody wear a monocle except in old black and white movies and pictures and whatnot, but I guess they exist. But don't believe what people say about different driving examiners. They do have biases, no doubt. They do that, and I'll tell you some stories about that after the presentation here. So good luck on your driver's test, and remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Make sure that you clean out your car before your driver's test. Yes, indeed. Thank you for that bit of information. The most important piece of information that I can give you for the driver's test, know what's on the driver's test in your location where you're going to be taking your test. Story about that, when I took my driving instructor's license in the province of Ontario, I had to go back and do my car license. So I had to show them that, in fact, I could drive a car, right? That I was qualified to be an instructor. And we had to parallel park. And of course, I was freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, don't hit the curb, don't hit the curb. At the test center in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, you didn't parallel park on the road. You didn't parallel park with cones. They had one of those concrete barriers that they use to divide multiple lanes on the highway. And you pulled up beside it and you parallel parked behind that, which was difficult because the lines of sight were not there. For example, you didn't have landmarks, and I couldn't judge whether it was going in deep or whether it was going in narrow. So first lesson, know what's on your driver's test. Know whether you have to parallel park. Know whether you have to do the Ohio maneuverability test. Know whether you have to parallel park with cones. What is on your driver's test, and prepare for the test. All right, so do that. Mallory, the weather has been nicer out here these past few days. That's awesome. Non-funny, about to get my permit down in Texas next Friday. That's awesome. And Corey will put up the videos for you on studying for your learner's permit, and we'll talk a little bit more about that during the presentation. But don't read the driver's manual from cover to cover. It's boring, okay? It's written by bureaucrats, and they're not, airport best novelists. Go online, practice driving test questions, do those, identify which parts of the driving that you don't know, right of way, how to make turns, attitudes, night driving, those types of things. And then go back to, once you figure out what your gaps are in your knowledge, go back to the driving handbook, look up the sections that you didn't know. For example, you missed some of the signs. Look up those signs, get that information, and then go back and do the driving test questions again. When you're getting 80 or 90% consistently on the driving practice test questions online, you're ready to go in and do your test, okay? And we'll talk about that. I'll give you some tips and strategies to be successful on passing your learner's test first time. Corey's put up that playlist. Thank you for that, Corey. Not funny to get my permit. Excellent. Hopefully get my license in June. Rudolph is going for his license in June. Excellent. Elevator fan. If the driving examiner intervenes before you, will most likely fail your driver's test. Absolutely. That is one of the automatic fails on a driver's test. And as elevator fan just said, there's two ways that you could be unsuccessful on your driver's test. One is an outright fail. The driving examiner intervenes in the test, so takes control of the steering wheel, puts the transmission in neutral. That's an automatic fail on your driver's test. The other way that you can fail is too many demerit points assigned, okay? You get demerit points assigned for minor errors and major errors. Minor errors are anywhere from 5 to 10 points, depending on the error, and major errors are 10 to 20 points. If you get one or two major errors on a test, you've got too many demerits, because most tests only allow you 35 points, and then you're not successful on your test. So know that. Two ways to fail. Automatic fails, demerit points. Focus on what you're doing. Take away the driving examiner's right to fail you. Nothing less, nothing more. Marion says, I still can't do reverse parking with those concrete barriers. That's okay, Marion. Most people can't do the parking with those concrete barriers. It's a little weird. And parking takes some practice. Reversing takes some practice, because what happens with reversing, and the reason that reversing is difficult for most people, is because for whatever reason, you now have to deal with the car as two pieces. There's the front end of the car and the back end of the car, and oftentimes what's happening with the car is those two pieces are going in different directions, owing to what's called off-tracking. The back end of the car is going to take a shorter path of travel than the front end of the vehicle, and that's what's going to give you grief when you're backing up. And it's just a matter of practice, getting used to where the front end is going, where the back end is going. But if you can think of the vehicle in two separate pieces, and two separate pieces of the vehicle going in different directions, that's going to help you improve your reversing and backing up. Ramen passed with only 3 minor errors 2 days ago in Kamloops. I watched your videos religiously over the past few months. Much appreciated. And that is awesome, my friend. Congratulations on passing your driver's test there in Kamloops, which can be a little bit tough for some people because lots of hills there in Kamloops. So it can be a little bit tough parking, especially if you're on hills and those types of things. So congratulations on that. Bureau, how do you connect with you for your advice? Bureau, you can connect with me down in the comments. Send me an email, rick@smartdrivetest.com, and definitely do what I can to try and help you out for sure. And Corey's put up the videos on how to reverse your car, the videos on that, and you can have a look at those, and that will help you with your backing up. Rawson, have you heard of the new vehicles in automatic transmission with paddle shifters? Rawson, those are not new. Those are old. And if you watch Transporter at the end of the video, at the end of the show, he's using the paddle shifters. Tracy's Audi has paddle shifters, and just about any vehicle that you purchase that has a sport mode in the transmission, it will have paddle shifters, okay? So know that. They're not new, they're for racing, and you can shift manually, and it just helps you shift automatic transmissions much faster because you don't have to have your hand down here, and you can keep both hands on the steering wheel while you're shifting. Roshan, I do learn a lot from you, man. I don't look back at the rear window. Okay, fair enough. Bureau, I don't have your email. rick@smartdrivetest.com is my email, so you can email me there and touch base. Skinner, car goes where eyes go, always down the road. Yes, look as far down the road as you can and keep your eyes up and try and interpret the sequence of events. And I'm going to talk to you about that. I'm going to actually got some stuff on the dash cam today where I made a left-hand turn right around the corner. There was a transit bus pulled over, and a car pulled out of the mall in the other lane. So it was 2 lanes. I pulled into the left lane. The car pulled out into the right lane, and the bus was there. And the bus was kind of half over, but not really half over. And then the other car come out into my lane. And as soon as I saw the bus, I come around the corner, I saw the bus, and then I saw this guy pull out, and I was like, oh, that guy's going to go in my lane. And it's one of those sequences of events. When you're driving, you're looking down the road, you're interpreting traffic patterns, you're mapping and tracking vehicles, road users, and you're saying to yourself, okay, that vehicle is doing that. What effect is that going to have to do on other things? Okay, think of it the same thing. Traffic is like a river, right? You throw a stone into the river, it's going to create ripples. You put a dam or a log or something in there, it's going to have an effect on the river. If you do something in traffic, it's going to have an effect on other traffic. And think of those sequence of events of what's going to happen and how is it going to affect you. Are you going to have to steer around that other road user or obstacle, or are you going to have to slow down? Because basically all I did when that other vehicle came out, I just slowed down. He went around the other vehicle. I'm assuming it was a he. It could have been a she. Went around the bus without regard for what I was coming around the corner. And I was just like, yeah, whatever. Go and have a nice day, right? Because I'm not on my bicycle and I'm not walking, right? Because we know that Rick, calm, cool, and collected in the car, but 0 to 100 on road rage when walking or on a bicycle. People are trying to kill me because I'm a vulnerable road user, right? All right, Marion, Rick, is the full test the same as the end test? Yes, it is. It is exactly the same as the end test, okay? So yeah, it's not any different. The only difference between the full Class 5 and the end test here in British Columbia, it's the same as other tests. For those that have 2 tests, is they just expect you to be a bit more experienced. They expect you to be a bit more smooth. They expect you to be able to understand and interpret traffic patterns and sequences at a higher level, right? So that's all it is. Emily, aside from what we already know with regular everyday driving, are there any different rules specific to driving on the highway only? I've only done it once and need to practice more. Driving on the highway, Emily, no. Keep your space. Your 3 to 4 second following distance. Stay out of the clusters on the highway. Corey will put up the videos, the playlist for you on driving on the highways. Merging intersections, okay? Because we have these kind of half highways, half freeways, and they're not a full freeway, because a freeway, as we know, is a limited access highway. So there are certain places, certain interchanges where you can get on and off a freeway. We have highways here in British Columbia. They have them in every province, every state in the US, where it's half freeway, half highway. There are some merges, on ramps, off ramps, but there's also intersections on some of these highways, okay? When you're driving on the highways, be looking farther down the road, looking for the signs, identifying the intersections and the interchanges. Those are your intersections. More than 40% of crashes happen at intersections. So when driving on the highway, it becomes important to identify those intersections and to locate other road users or vehicles that are going to move out onto the highway. And if it's a multi-lane, then move over to the other lane and let them get out onto the roadway. So that's the differences between highways. And Corey's put up the videos for highway driving, and that'll help you out, Emily. But again, if you've only done it once or twice, then yes, I would definitely suggest that you go out and practice driving on highways. Keep in mind as well, freeways, highways, only if they're within a very short distance of where your test center is, are they going to take you onto a highway or freeway? It's not likely. And owing to the fact that most driving tests are 10 to 15 minutes, keep in mind that with your slow speed maneuvers, your parallel parking, you're backing into a parking space, and your 3-point turn, that takes up at minimum 5 minutes. So now you've only got 10 minutes. So the reason they don't generally take you onto a highway or a freeway is when you get on one interchange and then you go down to the next interchange to get off the freeway, you're already 2 or 3 minutes. And then you're another 2 or 3 minutes back. So you're up to 6 minutes now. So it generally doesn't work, because driving examiners want you to demonstrate to them that you can drive in as many different driving environments as possible. Freeways are really not that difficult to drive on. Once you get onto the freeway, it's really quite easy. So it's not demonstrating to the examiner your driving ability. So that's why they try and keep you in residential areas and off the highways and freeways and those types of things. So not as a rule. It's generally less common that they're going to take you onto a highway or a freeway. All right, so Corey's put up those highway driving tips. Thank you for that, Corey. Skinner, it helped me pre-exam. Yes, so Skinner, so another thing that we were talking about during the presentation, go and take a practice driving test with a driving instructor. As I said, they're going to take you on the test route. They're going to take you to the places where they do the slow speed maneuvers, and they're going to give you feedback on the skills and abilities that you need to improve to be successful on your driver's test. They know the driving examiners. They know what they're looking for. They are your best source of information. It is your best return on investment, okay, to be successful. Marion says, yesterday I was on a multi-lane highway. A guy decided to change lanes and it resulted in a ripple effect across the lanes. Everyone took avoiding actions. I held back and watched everybody else because you were maintaining your space behind everybody else. You were staying out of the cluster of vehicles. And that's the other piece, Emily, if you're driving on the highways, stay out of the clusters of cars, okay? Because as Marion just said, if one person is doing one thing goofy, it affects everybody in the pack, okay? So stay out of the clusters, and I cannot emphasize that enough to everybody. When driving on highways, interstates, freeways, motorways, stay out of the clusters. Chantel, my driving test is on Friday. Any tips for the anxiety or something? All right, so driving test on Friday. Breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. Okay? Breathing, that will cause your body to relax, okay? Be prepared. Practice the slow speed maneuvers before you go for your driver's test. The night before your driver's test, do a pre-trip inspection, okay? Check all the fluid levels under the hood. If you can't do that or don't know how to do that, get somebody that can do that for you and help you out. Make sure you have enough fuel for your test. Be a little embarrassing to run out of fuel on your driver's test. Check all the lights, low beams, high beams, tail lights, signals, brake lights. Make sure all that's working. Look underneath the vehicle. Make sure there's nothing hanging down, nothing leaking. Okay, tires probably okay. All new vehicles now have tire monitoring systems on them. Open and close the doors. Make sure that the passenger door works. Make sure that the registration is up to date, that it's valid. Check the seatbelt on the driver's seat. Check all of that. Do a pre-trip inspection. If you're going with the driving school, ask the driving instructor whether he or she did a pre-trip inspection on their vehicle before going down for your driver's test. Clean it out. Give it a vacuum. Okay. First impressions for your driver's test. You don't get a second chance to make a first impression. All that. Okay. Show up 20 to 30 minutes before your driver's test. Make sure you have money, your license, another piece of ID just in case. Sunglasses, if you need sunglasses, you can wear sunglasses on your driver's test. And then breathe, okay? Breathe. Back into the parking space. That'll help you out when you're leaving and getting ready to take your driver's test. And Corey's put up the video here for you on driving anxiety. Have a look at that, and that will definitely help you out with your anxiety for your test on Friday. But know that everybody's got a little bit of anxiety on their driver's test, okay? I've done numerous driving tests, and it wasn't until I'd been a driving instructor for 20 years, and then I was doing tests again, a battery of tests that they made me do here in the province of British Columbia to get my instructor's license back. Then I wasn't nervous anymore because I'd been doing it for so long. But still, car license, bus license, truck license, semi-truck license, nervous all the time. In Australia, the same thing. I had to do it all over again. I'd get my car license. I had to get my truck license back. I was still nervous. So it's perfectly normal, within a degree. Emily, question, does lane placement mean anything on the highway? As a highway newbie, where should I stay lane-wise? Emily, if it's 2 lanes, you want to drive in the right-hand lane, okay, unless you're passing. If it's 3 lanes, your center lane is going to be your best lane. And if it's more than 3 lanes, then the second lane from the right, rather. Sorry, my left, your right. Second lane from the right is going to be your best lane to drive in when being on the highways. And if you have enough people in the vehicle and it's a high occupancy vehicle lane, then you can drive in that as well. But generally you need 2 or more people in the vehicle to drive in the HOV lane. But it's unlikely that you're going to be doing that. Now, again, in Ontario, as I said, you're taking your full G license. It's not likely they're going to take you out on a highway or on one of the 400 highways there in Ontario. So know that for the purposes of your driver's test. So, get a bit of practice, get a bit of experience driving on the highways, but know that it's not likely that the MTO is going to take you out there for the purposes of your driver's test. TYSI, I have my in-car driving lesson soon. Any advice? Yeah. What I would suggest is that you have the driving examiner. It depends on your comfort level when you're starting driving lessons. If you're comfortable, then you can go out and start driving on the roads, do your right and left turns and those types of things. If you're not really that comfortable, then I would suggest that you ask the driving examiner, or the driving instructor rather, if you could go to a parking lot and practice doing some slow speed maneuvers just to get comfortable with the vehicle, do some reversing, get used to the steering wheel, the accelerator, and the brake, and figure out how all of that works, okay? That's my suggestion. So confusing. Priceless, how are you, my friend, from Penticton, down in the south of the Okanagan Valley? Excellent. Epic, what do you think of passing the road test using a driving school vehicle instead of a private car like that? Your parents have, since I have a brother going into driving school and he might use theirs. Epic, it either or. Okay, if you use the driving school car, easy peasy. I mean, it costs money, obviously, right? Because you got to book for a couple of hours for a driver's test, and it's usually a couple $100. I don't know what it is in Pennsylvania and New Jersey for a driving test. It might be a little bit less than that, but I know here in British Columbia, where I live, and in Ontario, it's usually between $150 and $200 for a driving test and to use the driving school car. So it's one or the other. If you're using your own vehicle, as I say, I just encourage you, no, I strongly counsel you to do a pre-trip inspection on the car. Corey will put up the video for you on the pre-trip inspection, but essentially the pre-trip inspection, just to reiterate what I said before, check all the fluid levels under the hood, check the oil, check the brake fluid, power steering fluid, windshield washer fluid, those types of things. All the lights, high beams, low beams, tail lights, signals. Make sure that the passenger door opens and closes. Make sure your registration and ownership is in the vehicle. Make sure the seatbelt works on the passenger side where the examiner is going to sit, because you don't want any of these things to not work and then you're denied your driver's test. So do your pre-trip inspection for your the night before, and that's the only thing that's going to be different if you're using your own vehicle as well. Give your vehicle a clean so that, you know, first impression, right? On that note, secondary controls in the vehicle. You need to know 3 secondary controls. Know how to turn on the defrost and the air conditioning on the temperature control unit. Know how to use the windshield wipers, high beams, or high and low settings, and as well how to squirt the juice on the windshield to clean the windshield in case you get into some mud and goop and those types of things. And then headlights, high-low beams, okay? They may ask you for this stuff. When Charlie did his driver's test in Salmon Arm, they asked him to show and demonstrate how to turn those secondary controls on. So headlights, high-low beams, windshield wipers, work and squirt, and air conditioning and defrost, because this time of year you may get into some weather where it's muggy inside the car and the windows fog up. Then you're going to have to turn on the defrost to keep your vision clear. All right, air conditioning, defrost, headlights, windshield wipers. Know how to use those. Mallory, I think that being prepared for any kind of test before you take it is the key to passing successfully, and you are absolutely right, my friend, and I am pinning your comment, Mallory, just so Marion's not confused. Epic, I wonder if it's really worth it to use a road test service from a driving school, because the one that my family uses is in Frenchtown. Hickory Driving School offers the service, use horn where needed. Yes, if a pedestrian has their back to you and they're walking along the roadway in a suburban area, a little tap on the horn, okay? Remember, in North America, often the horn is seen as a sign of aggression, so you don't want to incite road rage on the part of other road users, especially on a driver's test. That might be rather interesting. I'm not sure how that would go down. Tui, if there are no speed limit signs under a yellow school crossing sign in the city, do you need to slow down? No, and Corey will put up the video for you on school signs, and you need to know the difference between a school speed zone sign and a school in area sign. If it's just the Pentagon, the one that looks like a kindergarten house with 2 people on it, that is school in area, okay? And there's not a speed sign attached to it. Only if there's a speed sign attached to it is it a school speed zone, okay? We have a high school a couple of blocks from where I live here, and many drivers go past the front of that and they slow down because they think it's a school speed zone just because there's a school there. It isn't a school speed zone. that would be considered a minor error on a driver's test, and the driving examiner, if they're an old curmudgeon, might assign you 5 demerit points on that. So again, it comes back to practicing for your driver's test in and around the area where you're going to be taking your test and knowing that information. And Corey's put up those signs there, the video for the school signs. Have a look at that, and that will give you the information on school signs and school speed zone signs. The other piece about it, and I was driving past the school in a school speed zone sign here in town on the weekend on Saturday, and the person was driving for the school speed zone. You don't have to slow down on the weekends. It's only when school is in session, okay? 8 to 5 during the day, and when school is in session. So on the weekends, school's speed zones don't apply, okay? Elevator fan, you have come back, my friend. Hello, hello, hello. Driver's test, 4 components of any driver's test: space management, speed management, observation, and communication. Social driving is the way that everybody else drives after they get their license. They speed, they follow too close, they don't come to a complete stop at stop sign intersections, they drive over painted islands, and the list goes on and on and on of things that people do that is not dangerous, but eventually it could lead to a crash if the right sequence of events comes together in traffic. For the purposes of staying safe, being a safer, smarter driver, and passing your driver's test, don't do what other people are doing who are driving on the roadways, okay? Space management. If you're not near anything, it's less likely that you're going to hit anything. 2 to 3 second following distance, 1 vehicle length back in traffic, and your landmark for that is being able to see the tires of the vehicle in front making clear contact with the pavement. 3 stopping positions at controlled intersections: behind the stop line, behind the crosswalk line or sidewalk, and if those 2 conditions don't exist, at the edge of the road where the 2 roads meet. The position of the stop sign has nothing to do with your stopping position. Let me repeat that. The position of the stop sign has nothing to do with where you stop at the intersection, all right? Many people erroneously believe that. Erroneously is a big word for error, mistake, okay? Right? Speed management. Flow of traffic or the posted speed limit, whichever is less, and your speed management is tied into your forward scanning pattern because you're looking forward down the road, instrument panel down the road, center mirror down the road, side mirrors. You're repeating that every 10 to 15 seconds, so you should be adjusting your speed every 10 to 15 seconds. If you're not, it's telling the driving examiner that you're not observing correctly, because you don't have that repeating scanning pattern in place. Observation, lane changes, shoulder check every time you change directions of the vehicle, and move your head. Let me repeat that. Move your head. Move your head. Okay? We are biologically unable to drive a vehicle and just move our eyeballs. Our eyeballs don't move enough in our skull to drive a vehicle well. You must move your head to observe well when you're driving. Okay? And sometimes you're going to have to move your body forward and back. Okay? Because there's a pillar here called the A pillar, which holds the windshield in. And sometimes it creates a blind area that you can't see past. So sometimes you're going to have to move forward, or sometimes you're going to have to move back when you're driving to observe correctly. So when you're driving, move your head, okay? Center mirror, move your head. Shoulder checking right, move your head. Shoulder checking left, okay? Move your head. Move your head. All right? That's what you need to do. Observation, shoulder checking, most common error on driver's tests. Communication, you need to communicate effectively with other driving. Social driving, driving is an activity. It's a social activity. You need to get along with other people. You need to communicate. It's a backup in case you miss something when you're observing. The ways that we communicate: position of the vehicle on the roadway or the road user. If the vehicle is in the left lane, there's a high probability they're going to turn left. If the pedestrian is at the crosswalk, there's a high probability that he or she is going to turn. Again, same thing today. Position of the bus on the roadway influence traffic around it. So you need to interpret those sequence of events that are going to happen. The other vehicles turning out behind the bus, they're probably going to come into my lane. I'm just going to hang back. So, position of the vehicle on the roadway, lights and signals, eye contact, pedestrian, cyclists, get eye contact, hand gestures, use all 5 fingers, don't tell them they're number 1 on a driver's test, and then lastly, use the horn, but use the horn sparingly because it's seen as a sign of road rage on a driver's test and any other time, and you don't want to incite road rage. Corey's put up the video on shoulder checking there, so have a look at that. Elevator fan, is stopping on the railway tracks an automatic fail on a driver's test? No, not necessarily an automatic fail, but I'm not sure why you would stop on a railway crossing. Please don't do that. Keep yourself safe when you're driving. Priceless, when I went out and got my Class 5 about 4 years ago, the evaluator just wrote good driver, and that is what you want when you come back for your driver's test, from your driver's test rather. Now, the examiner will give you feedback. If you're not successful in your driver's test, know that the examiner is only going to go over 2 or 3 things. They only have a limited amount of time to give you feedback, and they're just going to pick 1 or 2 things. They're not going to tell you everything that you did wrong on your driver's test. If you're in the city of New York, you're going to have to log on to their website after 6 p.m. Unfortunately, too many people have abused driving examiners after failing their driver's test in the city of New York, and they no longer give you feedback, and they no longer tell you whether you passed or failed your driver's test. You have to go on their website. So hopefully that's not coming in other places, because that feedback that the examiner gives you if you are unsuccessful on passing your driver's test is valuable feedback and stuff that you can work on and practice so that you will be successful the next time that you take your driver's test. And if you, in the unlikely event that you do fail your driver's test, Corey will put up the video for you on what you do if you fail your driver's test. So have a look at that video as well. Mallory, I pretend to do shoulder checks from the passenger seat, but I actually do move my head, and that is awesome, my friend. Setting examples for other people. That is really great. Epic says another use of the horn would be dissuading a driver to do an illegal move, like changing lanes too close to an exit. You see this heavily in New York City. Parkways, expressways, saw this on Saturday. And yes, if somebody is doing something goofy, like making a lane change into your lane, and you're there, then yes, definitely tap on the horn to indicate to the other driver that they're coming into your space where you are. Now, one and the same time, from a defensive driving perspective, in terms of emergency maneuvers, I say to people, and this is something that comes with experience with driving, sometimes the horn will work, right? They're kind of drifting over into your lane. They're not completely past you yet. You can honk the horn and they'll abort the turn, and or abort the lane change rather, and they'll go back into their lane. If it is a truly dire emergency situation, there's another car coming at you, for example, you're not going to honk the horn and hope that they make an evasive action that's going to save both of you. In many situations that I have seen over the years of teaching people how to drive, if you have time to honk the horn, you have time to do something that's going to produce better results in terms of evading a crash. Because it's that split second of honking the horn that instead of honking the horn, you could take the steering wheel and go a quarter of a turn, and that will steer enough for you to get out of the emergency in which you have found yourself. So I would say that for 95% of emergency situations in which you find yourself, do something else other than honking the horn, okay? If you have somebody slowly drifting into your lane, then yes. Or as Elevator Fan said, Epic said rather, that if somebody's coming out onto a parkway and there's not space and those types of things, you can honk to alert them of your presence and that you are there. But as I said, most emergency situations you want to steer out of, right? Because in an emergency situation, there are 2 ways to get out of an emergency situation: braking, steering. The thing with steering is that you need some place in which to steer, right? That's why we talk about space management, and space is the most important component of driving, because it's faster to drive out of an emergency situation than it is to brake. but you need some place in which to drive when you're driving, right? I got a client right now, sent me a video of one of their drivers, was on the freeway driving way too fast in the snow for conditions of the roadway, and there was a traffic jam, and they aborted trying to brake because they couldn't get the vehicle stopped, and they just drove into the ditch. First and foremost, they were going too fast for the conditions of the roadway. Second, they didn't have to just bail into the ditch. And this is the other problem with emergency situations, is that most people just give up, okay? If you're looking down the road, you're on the freeway, it's snowy weather, and all of a sudden you see traffic stopped, and you're like, I can't get this thing stopped because I don't have enough traction. You're not going to bail. You're not just going to go, yeah, I'm just going to go. You try to get off on the ditch and keep control of the vehicle and just drive by and keep working the brakes and the steering wheel as you're going by. So the bottom line of that, and as I say to many students when I've been driving and found ourselves in emergency situations, if you got time to honk the horn, you got time to do something better, okay? You got time to work the steering wheel. You got time to work the brakes. So the horn is a last resort, okay? It's a discretionary thing, but in 95% of the situations that you find yourself in an emergency, you're going to be doing something else other than honking the horn. Rick, after passing, when you can see both headlights of the vehicle in your rearview mirror, it's safe to pull in front of her. Yes, but you still want to do that shoulder check, Rick. Quick shoulder check, right? Quick shoulder check. Yes, I'm passed, okay? Because that is your best indicator. Eyeballs, okay? It's a good landmark, but you want to use all your tools because you don't want to pull back in front of that person and you're too close to them. Because unfortunately, I was tired when I was driving in Australia, and I did that to somebody else, and then we encountered a road rage incident where the person went past me and then brake checked me, okay? So, quick shoulder check before you pull back in. You got your space. You're using all your tools. It's the same thing when you're backing up, right? Yes, you can't see very much when you're looking out through the back window, but you're looking out through the back window. You're looking all the way around your vehicle, 360-degree awareness of what's going on around your vehicle, using your backup camera, using your mirrors, using all your tools, right? It's the same thing as building a house. Why would I use just a hammer and some nails to build a house? I'll use all my tools. Use a square, use a level, use some string, use some nailers, right? Use all my tools. It's the same thing with driving. Use all your tools to drive safely and to be a safer, smarter driver. Marion, or someone is texting while driving and drifts over into your lane next to you. Yes, there are those goofy people who are texting while driving, and they really, really shouldn't be doing that. Priceless. When I was in Texas, I was driving on the freeway and a semi-truck's tire blew, and I had to steer out of the way of the debris relatively fast. Unfortunately, I had tons of room to avoid it, and that is great. And this is the other reason why we don't hang out next to semi-trucks, because sometimes the tires do blow on those vehicles because they do have lots of tires on them. And Corey will put up the video on driving around semi-trucks to help you with that. Corey, residential areas, I had someone turn in my lane right at me from a stop sign, and turning right and braking was my solution. Honking would have taken time away from the solution. Yes, exactly what Corey just underscored my point there about if you get time to honk, you get time to do something more effective in terms of an emergency situation. Maybe I could have honked afterwards to show my disapproval, but that was about it. Yeah, usually, after the damage is done, fortunately there isn't a crash, there isn't a collision, but you've avoided the emergency situation and steered out of it and braked, and you're okay. Just leave it at that, carry on with your life, sort of thing, right? All right. Excellent. Railway tracks, we talked about all that stuff. So if you watching on the replay, leave a comment down in the comment section. Ask us your questions about passing a driver's test. And again, just to reiterate what the main points of taking your driver's test are, know what is required of you on your driver's test, where you're going to be taking your driver's test. Parallel parking between cones, parallel parking off a concrete barrier, those types of things. Are you backing up along a curb? Where is the driving? Are you really close to an interstate? Is there a possibility you could go on the highway or do some highway driving? Practice in and around the test center at the time that you're going to be taking your test. If you're taking it at 10 o'clock on a weekday, practice at that time so that you can replicate the traffic that's going to be present during your driver's test, okay? 10 o'clock in the morning is usually the best time to take your driver's test. Show up 20 minutes early, money, glasses, sunglasses, prescription glasses, and back into the parking space if you can. Remember to breathe. That will cause your body to relax and take away the examiner's right to fail you. Nothing less, nothing more. Emily, is there a reason cars stall on railway tracks? Sometimes, Emily, it's just a matter of somebody's driving a manual transmission and they stall on railway crossings, or, just bad maintenance in the vehicle, or a mechanical failure. Sometimes that happens, but not very often. It's weird why people would be stalled in railway crossings. I was, in fact, stuck on a railway crossing in the rain in Niagara Falls many, many years ago. I was in my 20s, and I had a 1975 Honda Civic with a 4-speed in it. Just about the ugliest car you could ever buy. And I got on the railway crossing, and I got stuck on the tracks. The tracks were wet, didn't have enough tread on the tires, and got stuck on the railway crossing. Two of my friends jumped out, pushed the car, and away we went again. But that's how we get stuck on the railway crossing. But other than that, I'm not sure. Other than that, how that would happen. Anyway, if you had a driver's test in the last couple of weeks and were successful, congratulations on passing. If you have a test coming up in the next week or so, good luck on that. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great night. All the best. Bye now.